Greetings, this is Christine Bundy on Gibson County, Indiana. It is Wednesday, the 21st of June, 2023, and this is GenEd Wednesday. Let's go ahead and start first with a moment of silence to honor our Creator. All right, let's go ahead and get into this. Declaration of 76, United States Constitution, a common lawyer comments, clause by clause, Brent Allen Winters, continuing with pages 16 through 22. We hold these Declaration of 76, United States Constitution, a common lawyer comments, clause by clause, Brent Allen Winters, continuing with pages 16 through 22. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Comment: this entire foregoing clause and the clause following form one sentence, reciting 5 self-evident truths, from which the colonists reasoned in arriving at their conclusion to separate from Britain and declare dependence upon God. Each of these 5 self-evident truths listed, truths so well known and attested that no proof need be presented for them, is set off from the one before it by the word that. The way of our common law tradition and scripture is to begin not with legal theory or legislation, but with facts that are beyond dispute. Thus, our declaration begins by affirming the indisputable. Every man's rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are unalienable. Freedom comprises the drive to pursue happiness. The happenings of the one making all that happen. See Good Book, A Common Lawyer Translates and Annotates, Matthew 5, 3-12, and note accompanying the word blessed. The secret to true staying happiness is liberty. Liberty wells up only from the heart or core of life, called courage. From time out of memory, only the one having given authority, rights, has also the power to take it back. For example, Job, in the depths of his calamity, affirmed the right of God, the giver of all things, to also take away that which he has given. The Lord gave, then the Lord took. The authority of the Lord becomes the most blessed. Job 1:21. So also our declaration here declares that those in government can never separate the individual from his fundamental rights. No man granted these direct God-delegated responsibilities. No man can ever take them away. In short, personhood and rights are inextricably entwined. In fact, any person, whether in government or out, refusing to recognize or otherwise trespassing on another's fundamental right does a personal offense against the Creator who has bestowed that right. Thus, our declaration here recognizes that the Creator has placed within, endowed, each individual, all men, mankind, certain rights of which the individual is inseparable. By considering the names that our declaration uses to describe the God upon whom the signers declare to rely in the last paragraph, one learns the characteristics of their God. For instance, the signers here recognize their God's right over man, man's property, and man's rights, because God is the creator of not only of man, but also of all things, both seen, which is nature, the natural physical world, and unseen, the laws of nature's God, including the God-bestowed rights of authority over creation given to each person. One man's responsibility to exercise these rights of duty back to him. The signers all knew and respected Scripture's teaching that the Creator is the sole author and giver of man's life, Genesis 2:7, and liberty, Isaiah 61, 1-2, and that he has clothed man and his authority over the earth, the land, and all other creatures, Genesis 1:28 and 9:2. 2 continued that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Comment. Our Declaration's splendid defiance, says Churchill, forces all to decide. Being in the common law tradition, it seeks not, as does the civil law tradition, to avenge the past, but to secure the future. Thus, Clause 61 of Magna Carta says that if the powers that be wrong the people, and no remedy remains after all processes have been exhausted, the people may take whatever action necessary to right the breach of their God-delegated rights, without fear of reprisal. Winston Churchill writes, the underlying idea of sovereignty of the law, long existent in feudal custom, was raised by it into a doctrine for the national state. And when in subsequent ages the state, swollen with its own authority, has attempted to ride roughshod over the rights and liberties of the subject, it is to this doctrine, Magna Carta, that appeal has again and again been made, and never as yet without success. End quote. Indeed, our government uses power, but not every power it uses is a just power. In fact, some powers our government uses are unjust. Just powers are those powers of government to which the governed have consented by giving them to government. Thus, government's exercise of just powers is by the people's authority. Unjust powers are those powers of government to which the governed have never consented by having withheld them from government. Thus, government's exercise of unjust powers is without the people's authority and is therefore abuse of power, which our Declaration calls usurpation. Government without consent of the governed. See Brent Allen Winter's Excellence of the Common Law, section 324, citing government by consent of the governed as far back as a deed signed AD 855. Please know, no government official has any right of power the governed has never given him. Why? Because the governed never can give government a right that no one of the governed could ever have had. Simply put, you cannot impart what you do not possess. For example, a juror must never give government permission to punish a defendant for violating a government command. The juror could never have rightly commanded the defendant if there were no government. Indeed, if a juror could never have had the right to do that which the government wants to do to the defendant, it is impossible that government has that right. Likewise, no legislature, by agreeing together, can conjure up through conspiracy any right to command anything that no one of them or of the governed could have had. In sum, just powers are those that the governed had the right before giving them to government. Unjust powers are those government uses even though the governed never gave permission. In some, just powers of government are only by consent of the governed. The common law lodges such consent most powerfully in the grand and petit juries. Just powers are those powers the governed could have rightly held and exercised before giving them to government. To continued. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. Comment. The foregoing clause asserts no right of revolution. To be sure, men have unalienable rights, and when a government violates these rights, the people have the right to alter or abolish that government. Such rights, however, do not necessarily demand violent overthrow of government. Such understanding is false. To bar such a notion, our Declaration sets out the standard of nature's God for those, such as present-day Americans, living under tyranny of government usurpation of power. Long-suffering patience. Our Declaration is no revolutionary manifesto. In fact, neither the word revolution nor language hinting at a call to arms is found in it. To be sure, full-blown war came, but not by the colonists' aggression. The British forced war. Stand your ground. Do not fire unless fired upon. Let the British troops pass by, and do not molest them without they begin first. Captain Parker, Lexington Green, morning of 19 April 1775. For example, by replacing the common law courts with admiralty tribunals, all for the ease of England's central banks, mercantilism, and trading monopolies, Britain removed any requirement for a search warrant and denied trial by jury. Consequently, breaking and entering homes and businesses to seize personal belongings and to arrest those offensive to the central bank's monopolies became widespread. But the admiralty courts, being civil law tribunals and not common law courts, offered no real opportunity to correct government wrongs. Trial by jury was no longer a live option. Consequently, the colonists could only meet force with like force or cower under forced association with the bankers' monopolies. Our Declaration's language reflects the phrases of John Locke, student of John Owen, Puritan in outlook, and thus preoccupied with the Bible, which dominated Locke's mind and writing. No right of revolution being part of Scripture or the common law tradition, John Locke never advocated it. In fact, the English and American revolutions, so-called, were not rebellions against authority or right, i.e., against God, the spring and distributor of all authority, but against abuse of power, in order to secure the future following lessons from the past. Thus, these two wars differ from most all other movements called revolutions, such as civil law's papal, French, and Russian revolutions, which tried to avenge the past, not secure the future. In fact, civil law is the ever-emerging child of fantasy, rebelling against our lessons from past facts. On the contrary, the British Parliament's 17th century war against the king and the British Americans' 18th century war against the king and Parliament followed humble but firm requests, later becoming a demand that king during the English war with the king and the king with Parliament during the American war with king and Parliament remain within God's constitution of authority, as common law requires. The English insisted the British king stop laying claim to rights of power that belonged to God alone. Later, the British Americans insisted that king and parliament stop usurping these same powers. Moreover, these English and American wars against imperial power were both in response against, not extensions of, the Papal Revolution's civil law doctrines that have overtaken most countries and now threaten the United States. Though, as this clause says, people are tolerant, all remain nevertheless duty-bound to arrest government abuse of power, once it fulfills the following clause's 4-point standard. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the study guide. Again, this is Brent Allen Winters, and you'll see the link there for Common Lawyer is his website, and where you can be able to find either you can get the book in print or PDF as you see here on the screen, or and then there is the study guide that's available to you as well. There currently is no discount. There is nothing that's like specifically for the Indiana Assembly. There is no any kind of funds coming back to the Assembly for this. This is solely because Brent Allen Winters is he has been working through, he's been studying the common law for decades now, and if anyone's going to have the key knowledge, it is with him. Okay, so we'll get into the study guide here. All right, which I have the audio that you just heard uploaded on YouTube. And then somewhere I'll have the presentation link for this as well. And remember that we are streaming on Locals, Odyssey now, Rumble, and YouTube. Technology, right? Goods and bads. We're trying to have a better relationship with technology, because if we have a better relationship with it, it will have a better relationship with us. Hopefully. All right. So we left off last week. We had finished number 12 on the study guide. Now we're on number 13. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their blank with certain blank rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now pay attention. It says that all men are created equal, and we have certain rights. It's plural, rights, okay? And among those rights, it's not saying that these are the only ones. It's saying among those rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Right? Okay, so we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. That among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Again, certain unalienable rights. Among those rights, it's not just life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. We have many, many rights. But among those are these keys: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And these are the ones that they constantly infringe upon. Number 14. Colonists. Let's see where it is. Let's see. It should be on here. Okay. Colonists reasoned in arriving at their conclusion to blank from Britain and declare blank upon God. So remember, the programming has told us that this is an independence. It's not quite true. The purpose of this was to separate from Britain and declare dependence upon God. Never was it to say that we were actually to be independent. All right. Number 15. The secret to true staying blank is blank. Liberty wells up only from the heart or core of life, called courage. The secret to true staying happiness. To keep happiness going, for happiness to stay, is to maintain liberty. And liberty wells up only from the heart or core of life, called courage. Number 16. So also our declaration here declares that those in blank can never separate the individual from his blank rights. No man granted these direct God delegated responsibilities. No man can ever take them away. So also our declaration here declares that those in government can never separate the individual from his fundamental rights. Okay, number 17. For instance, the signers here recognize their God's right over blank, man's blank, and man's rights. Because God is the creator of not only man, but also of all things, both seen, nature, the natural physical world, and unseen, the laws of nature's God. Okay, so for instance, the signers here recognize their God's right over man and man's property. God has the right, only God has right over man and man's property. Government doesn't have the right over man, nor does another man have rights over another man or their property. So while you're thinking, well, I'm not letting the government control me, but you want to be that, you want to try and be domineering and controlling over others, who are you? No, only God has the rights over man and man's property and man's rights. No one else. Number 18. To continue. Number 2. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. deriving their just powers from the blank of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes blank of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles, and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Okay, so deriving their just powers from the consent of the government. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such a form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. And possibly because the ones that are in this controlling government, they don't want to lose their job. Are you kidding? And everybody's going to be like, oh, but Sally's got 20 years of tenure. We don't want her to lose her retirement. I'm sorry, Sally. But Sally, you need to realize where you stand too. It's not, you're the one that decided to put it all there. You earned that retirement. You're not losing that retirement unless you connect and say, hey, I don't want that money. And nobody's telling you to do that because that's money you've already earned. You're not losing it. It's already yours. You've already earned it. That's why it's a retirement. Because you've already earned it. They have to pay that to you. Okay, number 19. Being in the common law tradition. It seeks not, as does the civil law tradition, to blank the past, but to blank the future. We're to avenge the past. Yes, of course, avenge the past. But at the same time, you have to secure the future. Because if you avenge the past and you haven't taken care of what's going on in the future over here, you're going to be right back in the same place you were at. So you have to do both. You have to avenge the past as well as secure the future. They don't want you to secure. They're okay every once in a while with you avenging the past, because then they're hoping you're just going to forget about the future so they can just do it all over again. Because that's what they're about, is they can't create something on their own, right? They have to get you to do it because they can't do it themselves. All right, number 20. Just powers are those, let's see, let me make sure. Oh, I gotta be over here. Okay. Just powers are those powers of government to which the government have blank by giving them to government. Thus, government's exercise of just powers is by the people's blank. Okay, so we have just powers are those powers of the government to which the governed have consented by giving them to government. So again, you have to remember to take responsibility and ownership that while there were so many things that we all know you did not consent to, technically you did, because as soon as you said you agreed to being a U.S. citizen, as soon as you turned over that driver's license, the identifying paperwork for the property, you consented. So you've got to realize that it's not just them. You had a role to play in this too. Thus, government's exercise of just power is by the people's authority. You got to remember where your authority is at. And that authority doesn't mean that you try to turn it around over here at the Indiana Assembly, your actual correct place to be. It's great that you're asserting yourself and that you're showing that you're building courage to stand up against those that you feel are just not allowing you to do the things that you want to do in the way that you want to do it. Which one? You're looking for a nanny state for that aspect. And you got 3 choices. The state assembly here, or you can go to a district or municipal assembly. District and municipal assemblies are more than welcome to give you that nanny state. If you want to come in and say you're entitled to do this and stomp your feet all over and demand and lie to whoever it is you're trying to get support from to get them in a call and then take up their time, to waste their time because you didn't bother to do your homework. This is not the place to pull that. If you want to show your assertiveness and your strength, take it to where it really belongs, that actual false government that got you into this. We didn't get you into this. So don't look here. Your battle is not here. You will not have a fight here. We're of peace. You want to fight, you'll be met with the hand and you'll be sent somewhere else too. Because there's a district and municipal assembly out there willing to take you. You need to get with the realizing what's going on here of what the truth is. You do not get to come in here and try and dominate yourself in this space. If that's what you think this is all about, is so that you can dominate and make everybody think that you look good, this is not it. I'm not doing this. This is not for me. Only reason I'm the main one doing it is because you all have decided you didn't want to do your own homework and you got somebody else that's there that will pick up the slack, just like any kind of group homework project. You always know there's 1 or 2 that actually do the work while everybody else shuffles off and leaves it and doesn't do their own. Now it's time for you to get off your lazy horse. Don't come to those that are trying to help you to live in peace with a tone that you should be directing towards the de facto where it actually belongs. Remember what just powers are. And so while you're still stuck in that programming, you're not capturing what the truth is. While you're telling a lie about the one that you're trying to get to help you at the same time. Okay, so remember, this is how we grow up. This is how we handle things maturely, peacefully. And we take it where it belongs. We don't just try to find what we think is who we think is the easy target to try and pull bull. Take it where it belongs. All right, 21. Because I'd be glad to, as long as you armor up, present the ClearChecks full PDF report from clearchecks.com of your background check, and you have your member agreement, and you're not showing attitude and tone like this of, thinking you're entitled to come in, you got homework to do. That's a huge part. That's the first step, is getting that paperwork done, the background check and member agreement. Then it's time to start connecting in with other people. It's time to start being more with, being with live calls, not just listening to the replay after. When there are events, get involved. But you're not going to just come right in here and think you're going to railroad over and try to turn it into the same exact thing that you're coming out of, right? Okay, so we got to get clear on what the difference is of just powers and unjust powers. And while the de facto has been playing what unjust powers are, you've got to realize that you can't try to play that unjust onto others either, just because you haven't been able to stand up to the de factos. So no, remember, we're handling things in peace, but we are taking things where they need to actually go. 21. Blank powers are those powers of government to which government have consented by having blank them to government. So unjust powers are those powers government to which the government have consented by having withheld them to government. Okay. Number 22. Thus, government's exercise of unjust powers is without the people's authority and is therefore blank of power, which our declaration calls blank, government without consent of the governed. Okay? So, while you may think you're not acting that way, you've got to realize getting clear on how things actually work, right? So, thus government's exercise of unjust powers is without the people's authority, and therefore it's abuse of power, which our declaration that's called usurpation. Government without consent of the governed. 23. In some, just powers of government are only by consent of the governed. The common law judges such consent most powerfully in the blank and blank juries. Okay, this is where the grand and penitent juries come in. Okay? This is part of this process of how you correct this. Number 24. All right. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and what? Transient. For those fads, right? Like current fads going along. Okay? Transient causes, and accordingly all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. This is the point here. People have gotten so, because of Christianity and the churches and religion, of gotta look outside, someone else will take care of that for us. Don't want to look in within ourselves, where we know that the Spirit's within, and if we've allowed Christ within our hearts, right, that would be within, not looking without, then we would be able to, we would have already solved this. We would have already stopped them from doing this. But everybody, well, I don't want to have to do the work that it'll take to make them stop. They should stop on their own. But if nobody's telling Sally that her job, that she's not doing the job she's supposed to be doing, how is Sally going to know? And then how is Sally going to know what her job is supposed to actually be if nobody tells Sally what her job is actually supposed to be? There's a big mind game that we have to break through on this. And the only thing that's going to stop it is you have to abolish what's going on. And that means you have to be the one to step up, not looking for everyone else. Because you are your first responder. No one else is going to come and save you. Nobody else really got you into what you got yourself into. You consented. Even in the very smallest ways, you did. So that means you have to take ownership of getting yourself out. That's just plain and simple. Okay. 25. Such rights, however, do not necessarily demand blank overthrow of government. Such understanding is blank. Now, this is the big thing, is most people think that there has to be a demand for a violent overthrow of that government. No, there's no reason that it needs to be violent. Everything that the de facto is doing is violent. Where has that gotten anybody? You cannot use the same tactics when you know those tactics didn't get anybody anywhere. All they did is just made it worse. That's just like the Nobody wants to be the one to tell your friend, hey girl, you're short, your skirt's too short. You're showing too much. Maybe you need to go back and find something else. Nobody wants to be that one that's truly caring about somebody. You're just being nice and giving platitudes when you say, oh, that looks good. You go get them, girl. You go right on out there. And you know they don't look good. As far whether if they're showing more than they should. They can't see how they look behind them. That's where they're trusting. That's why they even come to you to even ask you, because they're trusting and hoping you're going to give them the truth. But instead, many of you will go ahead and lie because it's easier to white lie it. Because we're afraid we don't want them to be upset and think we don't like them in their outfit. It may not be that the outfit itself is bad. It just may be that the size is wrong. Right? Just take a moment and look at it. But it doesn't have to be a violent process for everything. You can still be loving and make this change happen. But you have to do something. It doesn't mean you just sit around and do nothing and let somebody else handle it for you. 26. Our declaration is no revolutionary manifesto. Okay? Again, we are not in this for a war. No, because all war is so that they can steal more money and our blood from us. No more war. This has never been about war. The whole point was never about war. So stop fighting. Stop fighting the war within yourself. (27) For example, by placing the common law courts with admiralty tribunals, all for the ease of England's central banks, mercantilism, and trading monopolies, Britain removed any requirement for a blank and denied blank by jury. So, when they transferred it, when they unlawfully convert it to admiralty tribunals, just so they could get into it, removed the search warrant process and denied the trial by jury. And that all goes back to the Magna Carta, the law of the land. And again, none of these people are going to turn around and say, oh, we're sorry. We will immediately stop doing all of this and we'll course correct and get on the right track right away. No, they're not going to do this. Some, a handful, but for the most part, they're not going to do that. Are you kidding? This is their piggy bank, their gravy train, right? This is all they know. This is Sally's worked here for 20 years and this is institutional knowledge. Well, that institutional knowledge was all based on lies. It's time to correct it, and only we are the ones that can be able to do this. And that means you're going to have to get to a point where you're able to deal with the grand and petit juries. You're going to have to get past the point that this is not judging. The jural assembly, this is an issue that many are having an issue with the jural assembly, because they're having an issue with the command, the scripture of judge not lest ye be judged. Okay? But if you've been paying attention, nobody's judging anything all this, and in all of this, all it is what is self-evident. The laws were already created. The punishments were already given. Nobody's actually doing any judging at all. They're actually looking at the evidence. And the truth surfaces from that. So, while you're stuck on judge not lest ye be judged, the core part of why we're supposed to even be here is to discern right from the wrong. The jural assembly is about discerning the right from the wrong. It's not about judging anybody. Okay? So we got to get things straight. Just because it's jural assembly, while in the de facto there's a judge, and the jury's nothing in that de facto court, right? Yeah, the judge is making that decision. But that's where you're blinded by all of this. And that's why you think you're not supposed to be a part of this process, because you think you're judging. You're not judging. It's called discernment. There's a difference. The de facto judges, because there's nothing there to base it on. Whereas discernment means it revealed itself. The truth is self-evident. Okay? So this is some of these hurdles you're going to have to break through the programming. And only you can do it. There is no private consult you can get anybody to get into that's going to give you anything that's going to move you. And that's another thing. I'm not a personal consultant. And I certainly wouldn't be doing it for free either. Okay? I'm not here to just... I'm as coordinator. A coordinator is not a director. A coordinator pulls the information together, pulls the right people, the right places, that kind of thing, gets everything together. But it's still those people that have to actually do the work and still have to read the homework and the information, have to take it on, have to actually apply it. That's all. The coordinator is not the one that does all of this for you. No, that's district and municipal. No. A coordinator, pay attention to what the word coordinator means. Coordinates the logistics. It's not the one actually doing it. It's bringing you the information, making the places available to get together, making the opportunities, but it's still on you to actually take in the information, learn from it, and then actually apply it into what you need to do. That's on you. That is not the coordinator's role. And if that's what you're incorrect in that. And that's still in that nanny state thinking. This is you doing. You're doing this work. No one else is doing this work for you. Number 28, we're wrapping up here. In fact, the English and American Revolution, so-called, were not rebellions. We're just going to go right to it. They were not called rebellions against authority or right, i.e. against God, the spring and distributor of all authority. But it's against the abuse of power in order to secure the future, following lessons from the past. Number 29. Let's see. Oh, we're over here. Okay. The British Parliament's 17th century war against the king and the British Americans' 18th century war against the king and Parliament followed humble but firm requests. And number 30, but when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism. It's their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. What is despotism? Look it up. Get a dictionary. A dictionary will be your best friend. Really. You want a dictionary? You want a hard book, physical copy, as well as being able to look online. And online, you'll have to realize you want to have several versions on that as well. Okay. And yeah, if you're not sure, that's what you need to do. Look it up. Now, It's not just a right, but it's a duty to throw off this government because they're being destructive. They are not serving the people as they were, as their oath even. And we're finding that the current administration none of his current administration has even given their oath. Right? That's an issue. And there are living men and women all along the way that have the absolute authority to be able to say, stand down. But nobody wants to do that because then they might be looked at as being seen unpeaceful. I don't want someone to think that I'm going against what they have to say. You know what? It's time. Stop being afraid. All right, 31. In short, a people are duty bound. We're duty bound to separate from such government. It's not well, if we feel like it today, or, well, I'm not going to deal with it unless they actually come harassing me, or they want to pick me up off the street or something. Then I'll get ugly about it. But that's only because it's affecting you. What about everybody else? Because at some point, it has to come to a stop. Because if you're only dealing with you, you're only going to work with getting that one or maybe two officers, if off the street, which is very unlikely. But when you're coming as a armored up American state national, that's a different story. Then they have no hold over you to be able to pull this. But you have to hold that duty within you to realize you're the one that has to separate from it. It's time for divorce. And it'll be an ugly divorce, but a divorce nonetheless. All right, last question for today's call. The word right means duty, as is seen in the ancient word for our common law, Volk right, or the people's duty. This is the people's duty. Right means duty. If you want a right, then you have a duty to do something for that right. Not demand somebody else to do something for you. All right? Okay. That is all of for today's call. Going through the and I'll upload to the other ones the audio of just that reading portion. And so we'll go ahead and end here, and we will pick up next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central with the next segment. It'll be on going back to page 22, and I've been trying to run about 7 pages. That's a pretty good time here to be able to help keep us within an hour, or else it could just keep on going. So I want to thank you all for taking the time to be on the call. I wish you well, and peace and love.